Fellowship of the Broken, Making Sense of 12-Step Recovery by Angelo. Chapter 33, Step 1. Quote, "We admitted we were powerless over addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable." Close quote. As with all of the steps, the precise wording of Step 1 is very important. I will take time to dissect the wording of the steps in order to extract maximum understanding. This may seem a bit pedantic, but the wisdom is in the detail. The first word to focus on is we. As noted in the chapter on the origins of the 12 steps, this small word was added as part of the consultation on the original draft. It's the first word in the whole 12-step program and encapsulates the crucial importance of fellowship. Addiction is a lonely, bewildering and potentially fatal condition. It's difficult enough to recover, let alone try to do it on our own. We need each other. We need unity. The word admitted also needs attention. The word means confessed to be true, and the word confess implies reluctant acknowledgement. An addict in active addiction will be reluctant to accept that the problem is out of control, because such an admission will mean that they have to stop doing the very thing that their body and mind seems to depend upon. Unless and until this admission is made, there's no real prospect of recovery. We may realize that we have a problem, but we will be unlikely to engage in a solution unless we fully admit that we have it and that it is serious. The personal ego mind will resist the word powerless. Hitherto it has been personal thinking that has determined our actions. The idea that the personal self has reached a point of powerlessness over addiction is not welcome, despite plenty of evidence to prove it. The word powerless implies that the personal self has no power, ability, or influence over its own actions. This despairing loss of hope is brokenness, and the personal ego mind is naturally unwilling to accept that it has lost power and control. Each of the different fellowships replace the word addiction in Step 1 with the relevant addictive substance or behaviour. It's the only time in the 12 steps where there is mention of the specific problem. We've already covered aspects of addiction in a previous chapter, and all of it applies, whatever the particular issue. When it comes to Step 1, the more complete the understanding of addiction, the better. It is a multi-layered condition, and it progresses to the point of potential fatality. The word lives refers both to our individual existence and to our personal concept of what our life is all about. And we all have differing ideas about the purpose of life, and it is these ideas that are being referenced. And finally, the word unmanageable is used to indicate a lack of ability to manage or control our lives. And the use of the words had become suggests that we previously had this ability, but have now lost it due to our powerlessness over addiction. Step 1 may seem pretty obvious if an addict has reached a hopeless state of body and mind and is suffering all sorts of consequences. Experience shows, however, that there can still be a reluctance to fully admit the seriousness of the problem. And denial can be even more of an issue if the addiction has not yet reached a critical stage. When it comes to the carrot or the stick, Step 1 is most definitely the stick. Addiction progresses relentlessly, so however bad it may or may not be at the moment, it is only going to get worse. There is no going back to recreational use of the particular addictive substances or behaviours. Step 1 requires an acceptance that complete abstinence is the only realistic option. This abstinence does not need to be projected into the future, but can simply be practiced one day at a time, or in even smaller chunks of time, in early sobriety. So a literal understanding of step 1 would be that a particular addiction has run out of control and that it is causing our lives to be chaotic and unmanageable. There is acceptance that this is the case and that help is required to recover. By engaging in the steps, there is an appreciation that abstinence is necessary and that personal willpower is not sufficient to maintain such abstinence. A deeper understanding of step 1 would include a more comprehensive identification with all of the aspects of addiction. This would incorporate an acceptance of the multiple layers of addiction that give rise to our behaviours, and also the undoubted progressive nature of the condition. This level of understanding would validate the need for the solution to penetrate the deeper layers, and would thereby encourage the honesty, open-mindedness and willingness needed to work through the rest of the steps effectively. The next level of understanding would be that powerlessness and unmanageability apply not only to addiction but to all facets of life. The illusion of personal control over life circumstances is seen through. Our previous belief that our limited influence over certain aspects of our lives extended to the whole experience is undermined by the realization that anything could happen at any time to bring about complete change. It becomes apparent that we are powerless over the weather, other people, health issues, local, national or international events, or indeed almost any aspect of our lives that we care to consider. The personal ego mind thought it was in control, but actually it was just a thought. We have allowed our state of happiness, peace, love and unity to become dependent on external factors, and all of these are ultimately outside of our control. We've been trying to manage something that is unmanageable. No wonder life has been full of suffering and struggle. We become very keen to find a different way of being. The deepest level of understanding of step 1 relates to the process of metamorphosis. The caterpillar has reached the end of its phase of life and is now ready to undergo the necessary transformation into the intended life of a butterfly. This was always the intention, so there's nothing wrong. The admission of powerlessness and unmanageability is simply a recognition that the time has come for change. The caterpillar, in the form of the personal ego self, can enter into the cocoon of fellowship and safely undergo the metamorphosis into non-personal consciousness. Few caterpillars make it to the butterfly stage, but every human has the chance to emerge into being. In this respect, step 1 is a tremendous opportunity rather than a personal failure. The prospect of a period of discomfort may not be appealing, but it will be temporary and will lead to liberation. The prodigal son admits that he has exhausted his inheritance and begins to think that life at home was not so bad after all. Whichever level of understanding of step 1 we may relate to, they all require surrender. It is either surrender to the consequences of addiction, surrender to addiction as a condition, surrender to life itself, or surrender of the personal self to the intended process of transformation. And this surrender is not failure. It is the gateway to a far more enjoyable life and the attainment of the desired state of happiness, peace, love, and unity. My own experience of step 1 has naturally deepened as my recovery has progressed. Still important, however, to be continually reminded of the suffering that preceded my surrender. The impact of the personal state of desperation and brokenness will fade over time, and hence the stick of step 1 will gradually become less influential. Listening to the experiences of others when they share at meetings provides a constant and necessary reminder. Each step builds upon and hence depends upon the previous one. Step 1 is therefore the foundational step of recovery. The stronger the step 1, the more effective the subsequent recovery. It might be tempting to move through step 1 very quickly because it all seems fairly obvious at the literal level of understanding. But taking time to fully appreciate the depth of the problem will pay long-term dividends.